Hello there, and welcome to Stellar Sleep Stories. I'm so glad you're here tonight, settling in for what I hope will be one of the most peaceful journeys you've ever taken. Tonight, we're going somewhere truly extraordinary. We're going to become the consciousness of a visiting spacecraft, drifting slowly through the rings of Saturn. Not rushing, not exploring with any urgency, but simply floating, witnessing, and counting down the miles as we glide from the outer edge of this magnificent system all the way down to where ice particles fall like eternal snow onto Saturn's cloud tops. Before we begin this gentle voyage, I'd love to know, what draws you to the night sky? Is it the rings themselves that fascinate you? Or maybe it's the idea of floating weightless through space? Whatever brings you here tonight, I'm honored to be your guide through Saturn's lullaby. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, but only if you're still awake by morning. Let's prepare for our journey now. You can close your eyes if you'd like, or keep them softly open, whatever feels most natural. Just let yourself sink a little deeper into wherever you're resting. Feel the weight of any blankets you might have, the softness beneath you. Take a breath with me, nice and easy. There's no special way to breathe tonight, just your natural rhythm, like the gentle orbital dance of Saturn's moons, steady, patient, eternal. As you settle in, imagine that your consciousness is gently separating from your physical form. Not in any dramatic way, just a soft lifting, like a feather caught in the gentlest upward breeze. You're becoming something lighter, something that can travel, something that can witness the wonders waiting for us. You are now the awareness, the gentle consciousness of a spacecraft, not a cold mechanical probe, but something with wonder, something with the ability to truly see and feel the beauty around you. You've traveled so far already, past Mars, with its rusty deserts, past Jupiter with its swirling storms, and now, here you are, approaching the jewel of our solar system. Saturn grows larger in your vision, those famous rings catching sunlight like a cosmic crown. And tonight, you're not just going to observe them from afar, you're going to drift through them, ring by ring, particle by particle, counting down the miles as you descend from the distant, wispy outer edge, all the way to Saturn's atmosphere itself. 180,000 miles from Saturn's center. That's where we'll begin. Out at the very edge of the E-ring, where tiny ice crystals float like dust motes in cathedral light. From there, we'll glide inward, meeting the shepherd moons that tend their icy flocks, witnessing the braided beauty of the F-ring, floating through the brilliant A-ring with its perfect gaps. We'll use the miles as our meditation, our gentle countdown to sleep. 100,000 miles from Saturn, 90,000, 80,000, each number bringing us closer to the planet, each number inviting you deeper into rest. The rings aren't solid, you know. They're made of billions upon billions of ice particles, some as small as sand grains, others as large as houses, all orbiting together in a cosmic ballet that's been dancing for millions of years. When Galileo first saw them in 1610, he thought Saturn had handles or ears. It wasn't until Dutch astronomer Christian Huygens aimed his improved telescope at the planet that humanity realized these were rings. Flat, impossibly thin rings of light. And now, here you are, a consciousness about to experience what no human eyes have seen, the view from within. You'll drift past moonlets that carve gaps in the rings. You'll see how Saturn's gravity creates spiral density waves that ripple through the ice. You'll witness the shepherd moons, Prometheus and Pandora, as they gently herd ring particles with their gravity. NASA's Cassini spacecraft spent 13 years studying these rings, sending back images that took our breath away. Tonight, you're following in Cassini's path, but slower, gentler, with nowhere else to be but here, floating, observing, drifting towards sleep. The journey ahead is long and peaceful. If you fall asleep along the way, that's perfectly wonderful. The rings will keep spinning, the ice will keep dancing, and you'll keep floating, safe and weightless, through one of the most beautiful places in our solar system. So let's begin, shall we? Let your awareness expand. Let your earthly concerns fade. You're a spacecraft's consciousness now, and the rings of Saturn are calling. 180,000 miles from Saturn's center. Here you are, floating in the vastness where the E-ring begins. It's so different from what you might expect. There's no dramatic boundary here, no wall of ice. Just the gentlest increase in the number of tiny crystals catching sunlight around you. You can barely see them at first, these microscopic pieces of ice. They're like the faintest fog on a winter morning, each particle no bigger than a speck of flour. But as your consciousness adjusts to this ethereal place, you begin to notice how they shimmer, how they catch the distant sun's light and scatter it into the softest blue. 175,000 miles from Saturn now, drifting inward so slowly, so peacefully. The E-ring is Saturn's largest ring, but also its most delicate. It stretches from here all the way out to nearly 500,000 miles, fed constantly by ice geysers on a little moon called Enceladus. You can sense Enceladus somewhere behind you, spraying its fountains of water into space, where they freeze instantly into the crystals floating around you now. The silence here is profound. There's no sound in space, of course, but if there were, you imagine it would be like the quietest snowfall. Just the whisper of ice crystals drifting past, occasionally bumping into each other with the tiniest, gentlest collisions. 170,000 miles. The particles are getting slightly denser now, though dense is relative. If you gathered up all the material in a cubic mile of the E-ring, you'd have less ice than in a single snowball. Yet spread out like this, catching sunlight, it creates this veil of light around Saturn. You notice something interesting. The ice particles aren't just orbiting randomly. They're all moving together, like a vast, slow river. Each tiny crystal takes about 12 hours to complete one orbit around Saturn. Though out here, that means traveling at thousands of miles per hour. But you don't feel the speed. Everything moves together. like you're floating in the gentlest current. 165,000 miles from Saturn. You're beginning to sense the presence of shepherd moons. These small, irregular worlds that help shape and maintain the rings. The first ones are still distant, but you can feel their gravity, subtle tugs that influence the ice particles around you. There's something deeply peaceful about being part of this system. You're not just observing the rings, you're within them, moving with them, part of the dance. The spacecraft consciousness that you've become doesn't need oxygen, doesn't feel cold, just experiences the pure beauty of this place. 160,000 miles. The E-ring particles here are mostly water ice, the same stuff that makes snow on Earth. But these crystals have been in space for thousands, maybe millions of years. They've been bathed in radiation, bombarded by micrometeorites, yet they continue their eternal orbit, patient, persistent. You drift past a slightly larger particle, maybe the size of a marble. It tumbles slowly, catching sunlight on different faces as it rotates. For a moment, you imagine the journey this piece of ice has taken. Perhaps it was once part of Enceladus, ejected from an underground ocean through a geyser, frozen instantly in the vacuum. And now, here it is, part of Saturn's jewelry. 155,000 miles. The counting becomes a meditation, each number marking your gentle descent. There's no hurry. Saturn has been here for 4.5 billion years. The rings have been dancing for millions. Another few hours, or days, or weeks, makes no difference to this ancient system. As you float inward, you notice how Saturn itself is beginning to look larger. The pale butterscotch bands of its atmosphere are becoming clearer, though still so distant. The planet's shadow falls across part of the rings, creating a zone of darkness that moves slowly as Saturn rotates. 150,000 miles from Saturn's center. You're approaching the outer edge of the G-ring now. Another faint, dusty ring. But between the E and G rings, there's mostly empty space. Just the occasional particle, the rare bit of cosmic dust. It's like floating through the spaces between snowflakes in a very light snowfall. The solitude here is complete, but not lonely. You're surrounded by beauty, by the subtle play of light on ice, by the mathematical perfection of orbital mechanics. Everything here follows the laws of gravity and motion, yet the result is pure art. 145,000 miles. Drifting, drifting, the rings below you. If below has any meaning here, are starting to become visible as distinct bands, the famous rings of Saturn that you've seen in photographs. But from here, from within the system, they look different, more three-dimensional, more alive. You have all the time in the universe. There's nowhere else to be, nothing else to do, but float and count and witness this quiet majesty. 140,000 miles from Saturn. You're approaching something special now, something that even scientists find mysterious and beautiful. The F ring is ahead, and it's unlike any other ring in the solar system. As you drift closer, you can see why astronomers call it the braided ring. It's not a smooth band of particles like the others. Instead, it looks like someone has twisted streams of ice together, braided them like silver rope. The ring actually appears to have kinks, clumps, and strands that weave in and out of each other. 135,000 miles. You're getting close enough now to see the sculptor of this cosmic art. Prometheus, one of Saturn's shepherd moons. It's not very large, maybe 60 miles across, shaped like a giant potato. But its gravity is performing a slow-motion dance with the F ring. That's mesmerizing to watch. Prometheus orbits just inside the F ring, and every time it passes closest to the ring, which happens about every 15 hours, its gravity pulls out a streamer of ice particles, like taffy being stretched. These streamers then orbit at slightly different speeds, causing them to wrap around and create those beautiful braids and knots. 130,000 miles from Saturn, you drift alongside Prometheus for a while, watching it work. It's covered in a thick layer of ring dust, smoothing out its features, making it look soft, almost pillowy. Even though it's a moon made of ice and rock, from here it seems gentle, like it's carefully tending its section of the rings. The F-ring particles around you are different from the E-ring's tiny crystals. These range from microscopic dust all the way up to moonlets, maybe 100 feet across. Some scientists think the F-ring might be the remains of a moon that was torn apart by Saturn's gravity. Its pieces now spread out in this narrow ribbon, 125,000 miles. The counting continues, marking your descent. You notice that the F-ring is incredibly narrow compared to Saturn's other rings, maybe just a few hundred miles wide, yet it contains so much drama, so much dynamic beauty. There's another shepherd moon here, Pandora, orbiting just outside the F-ring, where Prometheus pulls material out. Pandora helps keep it contained, prevents it from spreading too far. Together, these two small moons maintain this delicate, braided structure. They've been at this task for millions of years, and they'll continue for millions more. 120,000 miles from Saturn. The sunlight here is about 100 times fainter than on Earth, but it's enough to make the ice particles glow. Each piece catches the light differently, depending on its size, its shape, how it's tumbling. The overall effect is like floating through a river of glitter, but slower, quieter, more peaceful than any earthly comparison. You pass through a clump in the F-ring, a temporary gathering of particles that will disperse in a few orbits. For a moment, you're surrounded by ice, from tiny specks to boulder-sized chunks, all moving together, all part of the same celestial dance. Then you're through, back in the relatively clear space. 115,000 miles. The F-ring is starting to fade behind you now, its braids and knots becoming a bright line in your wake. You've witnessed something remarkable, A ring that's constantly changing, constantly being reshaped, yet somehow maintaining its overall structure. Below you, though direction is meaningless here, the main rings are growing clearer. The A ring is approaching, brilliant and broad, one of the densest concentrations of orbiting ice in the solar system. But there's still some distance to cover, still some empty space to traverse. 110,000 miles from Saturn. In this gap between the F ring and the A ring, you encounter a few tiny moonlets, unnamed chunks of ice and rock, maybe a mile across. They're clearing small paths through any particles they encounter, like cosmic snowplows. Each one is doing its part to shape the rings, to maintain the gaps, to keep this system in its delicate balance. The peace here is absolute. No rush, no urgency, just the slow, inevitable pull of gravity drawing you inward. You could float here forever, watching the subtle changes, the play of shadow and light, the eternal circulation of ice. 105,000 miles. You're beginning to feel the outer edge of the A ring now, a gradual increase in the number of particles around you. The A ring is massive compared to the F ring, nearly 10,000 miles wide, and dense enough that it would be difficult to see through if you were looking from the side. 100,000 miles from Saturn's center, a significant milestone in your journey. You've traveled 80,000 miles from where you started, and you're not even halfway to Saturn yet. The rings still stretch out below you, layer after layer, each with its own character, its own story. 95,000 miles. The A ring is welcoming you now, its outer edge defined by the gravitational influence of yet another shepherd moon. Each ring, you're learning, has its guardians, its shapers, its maintainers. Nothing here is random. Everything has its purpose, its role in the grand design. 90,000 miles from Saturn, drifting ever inward, ever downward, into the heart of the ring system. 85,000 miles from Saturn's center, you've entered the A ring now, and it's like nothing you've experienced so far. Where the F ring was narrow and dynamic, the A ring is vast and stately, stretching nearly 10,000 miles wide. It's one of the brightest features in the entire solar system, visible from Earth with even a small telescope. The particles here are everywhere, surrounding you in a glittering cloud. Most are between the size of a marble and a beach ball, though some are as tiny as dust, and others as large as mountains. They're all pure water ice, or nearly pure, maybe with just a hint of rocky material at their cores. 80,000 miles. The density here is still incredibly low by Earth standards. If you could somehow gather all the material in the entire A ring, it would make a moon only about 300 miles across, smaller than Saturn's moon Enceladus, but spread out like this, in a disk hundreds of thousands of miles wide, but only about 30 feet thick. It creates this magnificent structure. You notice something fascinating. The particles aren't distributed evenly. There are waves moving through the ring, spiral density waves caused by the gravitational pull of Saturn's moons. These waves are like the grooves on an old vinyl record, but instead of encoding music, they encode the gravitational symphony of the Saturn system. 78,000 miles from Saturn, you're approaching something special within the A ring, the NK gap, a clear space about 200 miles wide, swept clean by a tiny moon named Pan. As you drift closer, you can see Pan itself, only about 20 miles across, looking like a cosmic walnut with a ridge around its equator. Pan is fascinating. That ridge is made of ring material that's accumulated around the little moon's middle, like a tutu or a belt. It's been sweeping this gap clean for millions of years, and the ring particles it encounters stick to it, building up that strange equatorial bulge. From here, drifting alongside, Pan looks almost alive, like it's purposefully maintaining its section of the rings, 76,000 miles. You float through the inky gap with Pan, noticing how the edges of the gap aren't sharp, but have wavy, scalloped patterns. These are created by Pan's gravity as it orbits, pulling and pushing on the ring particles, creating these beautiful, repetitive patterns that look like they were drawn by a celestial artist. There's something deeply meditative about these patterns. They repeat, but not exactly. Each scallop is similar, but unique, like waves on a beach or clouds in the sky. You could watch them forever, letting your mind drift along their curves. 74,000 miles from Saturn, back in the dense part of the A ring now, surrounded again by the endless parade of ice. Each particle is on its own journey, its own orbit. Some will collide gently with others, sticking together to form larger chunks. Others will be broken apart by impacts, creating smaller pieces. It's a constant, slow-motion process of building up and breaking down. The particles here have been orbiting for so long, millions of years at least, maybe much longer. They've seen comets pass by. They've felt the gravitational influence of Jupiter from hundreds of millions of miles away. They've been here since before humans existed, and they'll likely be here long after. 72,000 miles. The A ring continues, on and on. It's the longest continuous stretch of ring material in the Saturn system. Hours pass as you drift through it, or maybe minutes, or days. Time doesn't mean much here. There's only the gentle inward spiral, the countdown of miles, the endless dance of ice. You pass through regions where the particles are slightly larger, then slightly smaller. Scientists on Earth have names for these regions: the Colombo Gap, the Maxwell Gap, each one carved and maintained by the gravity of distant moons, or by orbital resonances with Saturn itself. Everything here is connected. Everything influences everything else. 70,000 miles from Saturn's center. You're approaching the inner edge of the A ring now, and ahead. You can sense something different. A vast emptiness. The famous Cassini division, From Earth, it looks like empty space between the A and B rings. But you're about to discover it's not empty at all. The particles are becoming fewer, the space between them growing. It's like approaching the edge of a forest, where the trees gradually thin out before giving way to a meadow. Except here, the trees are chunks of ice, and the meadow is the vacuum of space. 68,000 miles. The inner edge of the A ring is defined just as clearly as the outer edge. Another gravitational boundary. Another invisible line drawn by the complex dance of moons and physics. You cross it, leaving the bright glory of the A ring behind, entering the strange, haunting realm of the Cassini division. Looking back, the A ring appears like a river of light, billions of particles catching sunlight, each one a tiny mirror. Together, they create this brilliant band that humans have been admiring for centuries, wondering about, dreaming about. And you've just traveled through it, felt it, been part of it. 67,000 miles, drifting onward, inward. The journey continues, peaceful, eternal, hypnotic. 66,000 miles from Saturn's center. You're in the Cassini division now, that famous dark gap between the A and B rings that astronomers can see from Earth. But it's not actually empty, not at all. There are particles here, just far fewer, like floating through a very light mist after being in fog. Giovanni Cassini discovered this gap in 1675, peering through his telescope at the Paris Observatory. He saw Saturn's rings weren't solid, but divided. For centuries, astronomers wondered what kept this gap clear, what prevented the ring particles from just spreading out evenly. 65,000 miles. The answer is orbital resonance, a kind of gravitational music played between Saturn's the moons and the ring particles. Any particle that tries to orbit here would be at a 2-to-1 resonance with the moon Mimas, orbiting once for every 2 of Mimas's orbits. This creates a rhythmic gravitational pull, like pushing a child on a swing at just the right moment, eventually sending the particle out of this zone. You drift past a small chunk of ice, one of the few that temporarily passes through. It won't stay long. Within a few orbits, Mimas's gravity will nudge it somewhere else, either inward to the B ring or outward to the A ring. The Cassini division is like a no-parking zone, maintained by the gravitational traffic cops of Saturn's moons. 64,000 miles from Saturn, the silence here feels different. In the dense rings, even though there's no sound, you could imagine the whisper of countless particles. Here, in this relative emptiness, the silence is deeper, more profound. It's the quiet between musical notes, the pause between heartbeats. There's something peaceful about empty space. After the busy complexity of the A ring, this is like finding a quiet room in a crowded house, a place to rest, to float, to simply exist, without the constant visual stimulation of ice particles all around. 63,000 miles. Even in this gap, there are thin ringlets, narrow bands where particles have gathered. They're like the ghosts of rings, barely there, visible only when the light catches them just right. NASA's Voyager spacecraft discovered these when it flew by in 1980, surprising scientists who thought the gap would be completely empty. You notice how different the lighting is here. In the dense rings, light bounces between particles, creating a diffuse glow. Here, sunlight travels unimpeded, creating sharper shadows, more dramatic contrasts. Saturn itself looks clearer from here, its butterscotch clouds more defined. 62,000 miles. Time moves strangely in the Cassini division, with fewer reference points, fewer particles passing by. It's harder to sense your own motion. You could be still or moving at tremendous speed, without the constant parade of ring particles. You float in a kind of temporal suspension. This must be what deep space feels like, between the planets, between the stars, just you and the distant sun and the slow rotation of the cosmos. It's deeply restful, this emptiness, like the space between thoughts when you're falling asleep. 61,000 miles from Saturn, you can see the B ring ahead now, a wall of light growing closer. It's even brighter than the A ring, even denser. Saturn's most opulent jewelry, but you're not there yet. You still have this peaceful gap to traverse. The Cassini division is about 3,000 miles wide. It would take light itself about 1/100th of a second to cross it. But at your gentle drifting pace, you have all the time you need. There's no schedule here, no appointments to keep, just the slow, inevitable descent towards Saturn. 60,000 miles, a round number that feels significant. You've traveled 120,000 miles from where you started, 2/3 of the way to Saturn's cloud tops. The planet fills more of your view now, its subtle bands of cream and gold rotating slowly. You think about the Cassini spacecraft, namesake of this gap. It spent 13 years here, from 2004 to 2017, studying the rings, the moons, Saturn itself. In its final months, it dove between the rings and the planet, places no spacecraft had ever been, sending back data until the very end, when it became part of Saturn's atmosphere. 59,000 miles. The B ring is calling to you now. You can sense its density, its brilliance. It's the brightest, most massive of all Saturn's rings, containing most of the ring system's total mass. It's going to be very different from the emptiness you're floating through now. But there's no rush to get there. This quiet gap, this space between spaces, is perfect just as it is. Let yourself float. Let the miles count themselves. Let the journey continue at its own pace. 58,000 miles from Saturn's center, drifting, drifting, always drifting, toward the bright embrace of the B ring, 57,000 miles from Saturn's center. You've entered the B ring now, and it's like diving into a sea of stars. The particles are everywhere, more numerous than anything you've encountered. This is Saturn's crown jewel, its most magnificent ring, so bright it can outshine the planet itself when the angles are right. The ice here is ancient, billions of years old, maybe as old as Saturn itself. Each particle has been tumbling, orbiting, slowly wearing smooth. Some scientists think the rings might be the remains of a moon that came too close, torn apart by Saturn's gravity. Now that moon, if it ever existed, is spread out in this glorious disk, 56,000 miles, drifting deeper. The particles around you range from tiny crystals to house-sized boulders, but most are somewhere in between, like frozen pillows or icy furniture, tumbling slowly in the perpetual twilight. Everything moves together, like a vast river of ice, so slow, so peaceful. You notice something strange and beautiful. There are spokes here, ghostly features that appear and disappear. They look like shadows, or maybe clouds, stretching across the rings like the spokes of a giant wheel. They form in minutes, last for hours, then fade away. Scientists think they might be made of tiny dust particles, levitated above the rings by electrostatic charges, 55,000 miles from Saturn. The spokes come and go, like slow breathing, like the ring system itself is alive, breathing in, breathing out. It's hypnotic to watch. These phantom patterns appearing from nothing, rotating with the rings, then dissolving back into nothing. The density here makes everything feel closer, more intimate. You're cocooned in ice and light, surrounded by the gentle tumble of countless particles. It's like being inside a snow globe, but the snow never settles, just keeps falling sideways, forever and ever. 54,000 miles. Your counting has become automatic now, like a heartbeat, like breathing. The numbers just flow, marking your descent, but you barely need to think about them. They count themselves while you float, while you watch, while you drift toward sleep. There's so much material in the B ring that it's actually opaque in places. If you could look through it edge on, you wouldn't be able to see through. It would be like looking at a sheet of paper, impossibly thin, but completely solid. But from within, it's just this endless, dreamy cloud of ice. 53,000 miles from Saturn. The particles here have been colliding gently for so long, sticking together, breaking apart, sticking together again. It's a slow-motion dance of creation and destruction, but mostly just existence, just being, just floating. Sometimes, a particle near you catches the light just right, flashing like a tiny lighthouse, then going dark as it tumbles, then flashing again. These little rhythms, little patterns, they're everywhere if you watch for them. Or you can just let them happen. Let them wash over you, like visual white noise. 52,000 miles. You're so deep in the B ring now. It feels like you've always been here, like you've always been drifting through this ice. the outside universe, Earth, the sun, other planets. They all feel like distant dreams. There's only this, only now, only the gentle fall through endless ice. The B-ring is nearly 16,000 miles wide, wider than the Earth. And you're somewhere in the middle of it now, equidistant from its edges, held in the heart of Saturn's most magnificent structure. Everything is in perfect balance here, every particle in its place, for now, for this moment, for these millions of years. 51,000 miles from Saturn. The light is different this deep in the rings. It's been filtered, reflected, scattered so many times. It has a quality like late afternoon sunshine through winter clouds, soft, diffuse, gentle on your consciousness. You could sleep here. In fact, you might already be sleeping. It's hard to tell in this dreamlike place, where ice drifts like snow, where time moves like honey, where counting happens without effort. 50,000 miles, 49,000, the numbers just flow. 48,000 miles. You're beginning to sense the inner edge of the B-ring approaching, though it's still distant, still hours away at your drifting pace, or minutes, or days. Time has become so fluid here, so unimportant. The B-ring will end, eventually, giving way to the C-ring, the faint, transparent inner ring. But for now, you're still here, still surrounded, still cradled by this cosmic lullaby of ice and light. Let yourself drift, let yourself float, let yourself become part of this eternal circulation. 47,000 miles from Saturn's center, still drifting, still descending, always peaceful, always quiet, always perfect. 46,000 miles from Saturn, you're leaving the B-ring behind now, entering the ghostly realm of the C-ring. It's so different here, so much. More transparent, like moving from a blizzard into the lightest snow flurry. The particles are fewer, smaller, more spread out. The C-ring is sometimes called the crepe ring because it's so thin, so delicate, like crepe paper, or the finest silk. You can see through it to Saturn below, those endless clouds swirling, churning, but so slowly, so peacefully. 45,000 miles. This ring has been here just as long as the others, but it feels older somehow, quieter, more worn down. The particles are smaller, most no bigger than snowflakes. They drift past you like memories, like thoughts at the edge of sleep. You're close enough to Saturn now that the planet dominates your view. Its butterscotch bands fill half the sky, rotating once every 10 hours, but looking so still, so serene from here. You can see storm systems that are larger than Earth, but they move like clouds on a lazy summer day. 44,000 miles from Saturn's center, the C-ring is fading, becoming even fainter. You're approaching the D-ring, the innermost ring, the one that touches Saturn's atmosphere. This is where the rings meet the planet, where ice becomes clouds, where the boundary blurs. The D-ring is almost invisible, just the faintest dusting of particles. But they're doing something beautiful, something that takes your breath away. They're falling, actually falling into Saturn, a gentle, continuous snow of ice particles, spiraling down, down, down into those cloud tops. 43,000 miles, you follow some of these particles, watching them descend. They've been orbiting for millions of years, and now their journey is ending. They spiral inward, caught by Saturn's upper atmosphere, beginning to glow from friction, tiny meteors in an alien sky. This is Saturn's secret snowfall, invisible from Earth, unknown until spacecraft came to visit. Every second, tons of ring material drift down onto the planet. It's been happening for millions of years, and will continue until the rings themselves are gone. Maybe in another 100 million years, 42,000 miles from Saturn. You're so close now. The planet's gravity is stronger here, pulling at you, inviting you to rest, to settle, to sleep. The ring particles around you are so sparse, you could almost forget they're there. Just the occasional glimmer, the rare flash of light. Below you, Saturn's clouds look soft, welcoming, like the fluffiest bed. You watch the ice particles falling toward them, disappearing into those cream-colored layers, becoming part of the planet itself. It's beautiful. This ending that's also a beginning. This completion of such a long journey. You could fall too, if you wanted. Just let go. Drift down. Become part of Saturn's clouds. But not yet. You're still floating, still witnessing, still counting. Though the numbers come so slowly now, so quietly. 41,000 miles. Each mile takes longer now, or seems to. You're moving through honey, through dreams, through the space between waking and sleeping. The rings above you, all those rings you've traveled through, they look like layers of light, halos within halos, all leading here to this quiet ending. 40,000 miles from Saturn's center, almost at the cloud tops now, where the last wisps of the D-ring dissolve into atmosphere. You've traveled 140,000 miles, from the outer edge of the E-ring to here, the very boundary of Saturn itself. The ice is still falling, will always be falling. Tiny crystals catching their last glimpse of sunlight before they vanish into the clouds. It's like snow, but slower, gentler, eternal. The kind of snow you might dream about, silent, weightless, perfect. You float here at the boundary, watching the endless snowfall, feeling the peaceful completion of your journey. There's nowhere else to go, nothing else to see, just this eternal moment, this perfect peace, this gentle transition from rings to clouds, from ice to dreams. Let yourself rest here, watching the snow, counting the falling crystals if you want, or just floating, just being, just breathing with the rhythm of Saturn's great circulation. You've come so far, seen such wonders, and now you can rest. The snow continues to fall, will always fall, and you're here to witness it or to sleep through it, whatever feels right, whatever brings you peace. 39,000 miles from Saturn, or maybe it's 40,000, or maybe the numbers don't matter anymore. You're here at the end of our journey, watching the eternal snow of ring particles falling into Saturn's clouds, and that's all that matters. You've traveled so far tonight, from the wispy edge of the E ring, through the braided beauty of the F ring, across the brilliant expanses of the A and B rings, and down, 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 to where ice becomes atmosphere, where rings become planet, where journey becomes rest. If you're still awake, still floating with me here, I want to thank you for joining me on this peaceful voyage. But if you've already drifted off to sleep, that's perfect too. The rings will keep spinning, the ice will keep falling, and you'll keep floating in whatever dreams have found you. The spacecraft consciousness that you've become doesn't need to go anywhere else tonight. You can stay here, watching the snow, or you can let your awareness fade completely, dissolving into the deepest, most peaceful sleep. Saturn will be here, spinning slowly, its rings dancing their ancient dance long after you wake. They've been here for millions of years. They'll be here tomorrow, and the next night, whenever you need to return to this peaceful place. So rest now. Rest completely. Let the counting fade. Let the journey end. Let yourself fall like those ice particles, gently, softly, into the warm clouds of sleep. Good night. Sweet dreams. And thank you for drifting with me through Saturn's lullaby.